My name is Keisha, and for 3 years, Mrs. Harrison clutched her purse every single time I walked past her. Every single time. Like I was going to steal from her. I was just her housekeeper, trying to make an honest living, but in her eyes, I was a threat. Then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, everything changed. She collapsed right in front of me, barely breathing, and I had a choice to make. I could walk away, or I could save the woman who never trusted me. What I did next changed both our lives forever. And when she finally opened her eyes in that hospital bed, she whispered 3 words to me that I never thought I'd hear. This is my story. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your country in the comments below. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Your support means everything to me. Now, let me tell you how this all began. My name is Keisha Williams, and I've been invisible my entire life. Not literally, of course, but in the way that matters most, in the eyes of people who look right through you like you're nothing more than furniture. For 3 years, I worked as a housekeeper for Mrs. Eleanor Harrison, and for 3 years, she treated me like I was going to rob her blind. Let me paint you a picture of Mrs. Harrison's world. Her mansion sat on top of Willow Creek Hills, the kind of neighborhood where the houses have names instead of numbers. The Harrison estate, they called it. 3 stories of cream-colored stone with columns that reached toward the sky like it was trying to touch heaven itself. Manicured lawns that stretched for what seemed like miles. A fountain in the circular driveway with marble cherubs frozen mid-laugh. It was the kind of place you see in magazines, where everything gleamed and nothing was ever out of place. And then there was me. I arrived every morning at 7:30 sharp, parking my beat-up Honda Civic behind the garage where it wouldn't ruin the view. I'd walk through the service entrance, never the front door, of course, and begin my day in a house that cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Mrs. Eleanor Harrison was 72 years old, with silver hair always styled in perfect waves, pearls around her neck even on casual Tuesdays, and a way of holding herself that told you she'd never worked a day in her life. Not real work, anyway. She was a widow, had been for 8 years, and her late husband's oil money kept her living in the style she'd always known. The purse clutching started my very first day. I remember it so clearly, it still makes my chest tight. I just finished vacuuming the library. Yes, they had a whole room just for books. And I was walking down the hallway carrying my cleaning supplies. Mrs. Harrison was coming from the opposite direction, her designer handbag hanging from the crook of her arm. The moment she saw me, her hand shot to that purse like I'd pulled out a weapon. She gripped it against her body, her knuckles going white, her eyes never leaving me as we passed each other in that wide, sun-filled corridor. I said, "Good morning, Mrs. Harrison." She said nothing, just clutched that purse tighter and walked faster. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe she was adjusting it. Maybe it was slipping. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But then it happened again. And again. Every single time our paths crossed in that enormous house, the same reaction. See Keisha? Grab purse, protect valuables. It wasn't just the purse, though. That was just the most obvious sign. There were other things, smaller things that added up like drops of water until you're drowning and you don't even know how you got underwater. She'd count the silver after I polished it, running her fingers over each piece like she was taking inventory. She'd hover near doorways when I cleaned rooms with expensive paintings or antiques, pretending to read or check her phone, but I could feel her eyes on me. She never left her jewelry box out when I cleaned her bedroom. It went straight into the safe, like I was some kind of criminal waiting for my chance. And the way she spoke to me. Oh, Lord, the way she spoke to me. "Keisha, make sure you don't touch the crystal vase. It's worth more than, well, it's very valuable. Keisha, I noticed one of my vintage brooches was slightly out of place. Do you know anything about that? Keisha, I'll need to check the silverware count before you leave today." Never a please, never a thank you unless her daughter was visiting. It was always instructions, always suspicion, always this underlying current that said, I can't trust you. The thing is, I needed that job. Desperately. My daughter, Jasmine, was 16 and brilliant. The kind of brilliant that could take her places I'd never been. She'd gotten accepted to a STEM program at the state university, a chance to spend her junior and senior year taking college courses, surrounding herself with opportunities I'd only dreamed of when I was her age. But it wasn't free. There were fees, books, transportation costs. Her daddy had left us when she was 3, and it was just us against the world. So I swallowed my pride. Every single day, I swallowed it down and showed up at that mansion with my cleaning supplies and my dignity hanging by a thread. The Harrison family dynamics were complicated, from what I could piece together. Mrs. Harrison had 2 children, a son, Richard, who lived in New York and called once a week out of obligation, and a daughter, Caroline, who visited every Sunday with her husband and 2 kids. Caroline was nothing like her mother. She actually saw me as a person. She'd ask about Jasmine, remembered details from previous conversations, even insisted I eat some of whatever she brought for Sunday dinner. "Mom, Keisha's not an employee, she's part of the household," Caroline would say, but Mrs. Harrison would just purse her lips and change the subject. I often wondered what made Mrs. Harrison the way she was. She'd grown up in wealth, married into more wealth, lived her whole life in this bubble where people like me were just supposed to serve people like her. Maybe nobody had ever challenged that view. Maybe she'd never had to see past her own assumptions. There were moments, brief, flickering moments, when I'd catch something in her expression that made me think there was more to her story. A sadness in her eyes when she thought nobody was watching. The way her hands trembled slightly when she was alone in the morning, before she put on her perfect face. The photographs in her bedroom of a young woman who looked like her, photos that were dusty because she never asked me to clean them. But those moments vanished as quickly as they came, replaced by the cold distance, the suspicion, the purse clutching. I remember thinking as I scrubbed her floors and dusted her priceless antiques that this was what inequality looked like up close. Not just the difference in our bank accounts, but the difference in how we were allowed to exist in the world. She could assume the worst of me without consequence. She could make me feel small without ever raising her voice. She held all the power, and we both knew it. Some nights, I'd lie awake thinking about quitting, about walking away from that beautiful prison and finding work where I'd at least be treated like a human being. But then I'd think about Jasmine's face when she talked about her program, about her future, about getting out of our neighborhood and making something of herself. So I stayed. I endured. I became invisible. I had no idea that everything was about to change, that one ordinary Tuesday morning would shatter both of our carefully constructed worlds and force us to see each other, really see each other, for the very first time. Sometimes the biggest transformations start with the smallest acts of humanity. I just didn't know I'd be the one performing that act for the woman who'd spent 3 years treating me like a criminal. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon in late September, 3 years and 2 months after I'd started working for Mrs. Harrison. I'd had a rough morning. Jasmine had called me during my lunch break, crying because the program fees were due earlier than expected, and we were still $200 short. I'd assured her we'd figure it out, that I'd pick up extra hours somewhere, that everything would be okay. But my hands were shaking when I hung up the phone, and my heart felt like it was sitting in my stomach. I was in Mrs. Harrison's bedroom, changing the silk sheets on her 4-poster bed, when she walked in with her friend, Margaret Bentley. Mrs. Bentley was cut from the same cloth as Mrs. Harrison. Old money, expensive clothes, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about anything real. They didn't acknowledge me. I might as well have been a lamp. "I just don't understand why it's so difficult to find good help these days," Mrs. Bentley was saying, her voice dripping with exasperation. "My housekeeper quit last month, and the agency sent me 3 replacements. 3. None of them worked out. What was wrong with them? Mrs. Harrison asked, settling into her velvet chair by the window. Oh, you know, lazy, always on their phones, and I could never quite trust them around my things. Mrs. Bentley lowered her voice, but not enough. One of them was very urban, if you know what I mean. My hands froze on the pillowcase. Urban. That word they used when they didn't want to say what they really meant. Mrs. Harrison made a sympathetic noise. I know exactly what you mean. You have to watch them constantly. I never leave anything valuable out when Keisha is here. She said my name like it was something distasteful on her tongue. Mrs. Bentley glanced at me for the first time, her eyes sweeping over me like I was part of the furniture. You're lucky she's honest, at least, is she? There was a pause, a horrible, stretching pause where Mrs. Harrison actually seemed to consider the question. I was standing right there in the same room, and she was debating my honesty, like I was deaf or didn't matter enough to care. So far, Mrs. Harrison finally said, but I'm careful. One can never be too careful with these people. These people. Something inside me cracked. I finished tucking the corners of the fitted sheet with movements that were too sharp, too rough. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I'd be damned if I let them fall. Not here, not in front of them. Will that be all, Mrs. Harrison? I asked, my voice steady despite everything. She waved her hand dismissively. Yes, don't forget to dust the chandelier in the dining room before you leave. I walked out of that bedroom with my head high and my dignity in tatters. In the service bathroom, I locked the door and let myself cry for exactly 3 minutes. I watched the clock, counted the seconds, and then I washed my face, fixed my appearance, and made a decision. I was done. No amount of money was worth this. No opportunity for Jasmine was worth me losing myself. There had to be another way. There had to be. I'd give my 2 weeks' notice today. I'd find another job, pick up night shifts at the grocery store, sell whatever I could sell. Jasmine would understand. She'd be devastated, but she'd understand that her mother couldn't keep sacrificing her soul for a paycheck. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I cleaned mechanically, my mind rehearsing the words I'd say. I'd be professional, polite. I wouldn't burn bridges or lose my temper, no matter how much I wanted to tell Mrs. Harrison exactly what I thought of her and her "these people" comment. But as the day wore on and the moment approached, doubt crept in like fog. What if I couldn't find another job quickly enough? What if the grocery store wasn't hiring? What if I let Jasmine down and she had to give up the program? And years from now, she resented me for not being strong enough to endure a little disrespect. I was loading my cleaning supplies into my car when Caroline pulled into the driveway in her silver SUV. It wasn't Sunday. She never came on Fridays. Keisha, she called out, hurrying over with concern written all over her face. I'm so glad I caught you. Are you okay? I must have looked as wrecked as I felt. I'm fine, I lied. Caroline shook her head. Margaret Bentley called me. She felt guilty about their conversation earlier and thought I should know. Keisha, I am so sorry. My mother... She stopped, struggling for words. There's no excuse for the way she treats you. None. The kindness in her voice almost broke me all over again. I'm quitting, I heard myself say. I was going to give notice today, but I don't know if I can afford to. Caroline's expression shifted to something fierce. Don't quit. Please, not yet. Let me talk to her. I've been too soft, too worried about keeping the peace, but this has gone too far. She needs to hear some hard truths, and she needs to hear them from me. It won't change anything, I said quietly. People like your mother don't change. Maybe you're right, but maybe she just needs someone to hold up a mirror. Either way, you deserve better than this. Just give me this weekend. If nothing changes by Monday, I'll write you the most glowing recommendation letter you've ever seen, and I'll personally help you find a position where you're valued. I wanted to say no. I wanted to walk away right then and never look back. But Caroline's eyes were pleading, and I was so tired of fighting. One weekend, I agreed, but I'm not holding my breath. That weekend, I didn't hear from Caroline or Mrs. Harrison. I spent Saturday with Jasmine, pretending everything was fine, and Sunday staring at job listings online, feeling like I was drowning. Monday morning, I almost didn't go back. I sat in my car in that circular driveway for a full 5 minutes, debating, praying, trying to find the strength to face one more day. I had no idea that this would be the day everything changed, that in less than 2 hours, I'd be making a decision that would transform both of our lives forever. Sometimes the universe has a funny way of keeping you exactly where you need to be, even when all you want to do is run. It was 9:47 on a Tuesday morning when Mrs. Eleanor Harrison's life hung in the balance, and I had to decide what kind of person I really was. I'd been in the kitchen, scrubbing the marble countertops with more force than necessary, still angry about Friday's conversation, still wondering if I'd made the right choice coming back. The house was quiet except for the classical music drifting from Mrs. Harrison's study, Vivaldi, always Vivaldi on Tuesday mornings. Then the music stopped. I wouldn't have thought anything of it except I heard something else, a crash, the heavy sound of something or someone hitting the floor. My hands stilled on the counter. I waited, listening. Nothing. "Mrs. Harrison?" I called out. Silence. Every instinct told me to check on her, but another voice whispered in my head, "Why should you care? She's never cared about you. Let her daughter find her. Let someone who matters to her help." I'm not proud of that thought, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't cross my mind. Then I heard it, a sound that made my blood run cold, a gasping, choking wheeze, the sound of someone struggling to breathe. I ran. Mrs. Harrison was on the floor of her study, collapsed between her desk and the bookshelf. Her face was gray, her lips turning blue, one hand clutching at her chest while the other reached out toward nothing. Her eyes were wide with terror, and that's what broke through my anger. The raw, primal fear of someone who knows they're dying. "Mrs. Harrison," I dropped to my knees beside her. "Can you hear me?" She tried to speak, but only a strangled sound came out. Her body convulsed, and then she went limp. My nursing training kicked in. I'd done 2 years at community college before money ran out, but I'd kept my CPR certification current. I checked for a pulse. Weak, too weak. Her chest wasn't rising. I tilted her head back, checked her airway, and started CPR. 1, 2, 3, 4. I counted out loud, pushing hard on her sternum, feeling her ribs flex beneath my palms. This woman who'd clutched her purse away from me for 3 years now had my hands on her chest, fighting to keep her heart beating. After 30 compressions, I gave her 2 rescue breaths and started again. "Come on, Mrs. Harrison, don't you dare die on me. Not like this." With my free hand, I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911, putting it on speaker. 911, what's your emergency? "I need an ambulance at 847 Willow Creek Hills Drive. 72-year-old woman, possible heart attack, unconscious, not breathing. I'm performing CPR." "Is the patient responsive?" "No, no pulse. I'm 30 seconds into my second round of compressions." The dispatcher's voice was calm, steady. "You're doing great. Keep going. Ambulance is 3 minutes away. Do you know if she has any medical conditions?" I kept pumping her chest, sweat dripping down my face. High blood pressure medication in her bathroom. I don't know what else. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. I kept counting, kept pushing, kept breathing life back into a woman who'd spent years making me feel worthless. My arms burned, my back screamed, but I didn't stop. "Please," I whispered between compressions. "Please don't die. Your daughter needs you. Caroline needs you." On my 4th round of compressions, Mrs. Harrison gasped. Her eyes fluttered open for just a second, unfocused and confused, before closing again. But her chest rose on its own. She was breathing. "She's breathing," I shouted to the dispatcher. "She's got a pulse." "Excellent work. Keep her comfortable. Paramedics are pulling up now." The next few minutes were a blur of sirens and urgent voices. Paramedics rushed in with equipment and stretched Mrs. Harrison onto a gurney. They asked rapid-fire questions about what happened, what I'd done, how long she'd been unconscious. I answered on autopilot, my hands still shaking from the adrenaline. "You saved her life," one of the paramedics said, as they wheeled her toward the door. "If you'd waited even 2 more minutes, we'd be having a different conversation." They loaded her into the ambulance, and I stood in the driveway, covered in sweat, my work uniform wrinkled, watching the vehicle speed away with lights flashing. I could have gone home. I should have gone home. I'd done my job, more than my job. I'd saved the woman's life. That was enough. But instead, I found myself grabbing my keys and following that ambulance to Mercy General Hospital. The emergency room was chaos. I sat in a plastic chair in the waiting room, still in my cleaning clothes, feeling completely out of place among the worried family members and crying children. I called Caroline and left a voicemail with the details. Then I just sat there, waiting for news I had no right to expect. An hour passed, then 2. Caroline burst through the automatic doors looking frantic, her husband David right behind her. She spotted me immediately and rushed over. "Oh my God, Kesha," she pulled me into a tight hug. "The hospital called me. They said you saved her. They said if you hadn't been there..." "Is she okay?" "She's stable, in ICU. They said it was a major heart attack, but she's going to make it because of you." Caroline's eyes filled with tears. "You saved my mother's life after the way she's treated you. I don't even know what to say." Neither did I. We sat together in that waiting room for another hour before a doctor came out and said Mrs. Harrison was awake and asking for someone named Kesha. My heart stopped. "She wants to see me?" The doctor nodded. "She's very weak and can't talk much, but she's been asking for you since she woke up. Are you family?" "No, I'm her..." I hesitated. What was I? Her housekeeper? Her employee? The woman she'd never trusted? "She's important to my mother," Caroline said firmly. "Please let her through." The doctor led me down a hallway that smelled of antiseptic and fear, to a room where machines beeped steadily and Mrs. Eleanor Harrison lay small and fragile in a hospital bed, oxygen tubes in her nose, IV lines in her arms. When she saw me, tears spilled down her cheeks. I approached slowly, unsure, still feeling like I didn't belong. Mrs. Harrison reached out a trembling hand toward me. I took it, the first time we'd ever touched voluntarily, without fear or suspicion. Her lips moved, forming words that were barely a whisper, but in that quiet hospital room, they echoed like thunder. I was wrong. I was wrong. Those 3 words hung in the sterile hospital air like a confession, like a prayer, like the breaking of chains that had bound both of us for 3 long years. I stood there holding Mrs. Harrison's hand, not knowing what to say, barely able to process what I'd just heard. "About everything," she whispered, her voice raspy from the breathing tube they'd removed an hour earlier. "About you. About so much." Caroline moved closer to the bed, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, you need to rest. The doctors said..." "No." Mrs. Harrison's grip on my hand tightened with surprising strength. "I need to say this. I need her to hear it while I still can." She took a shallow breath, wincing with pain, but her eyes never left mine. "When I was young, younger than you are now, I was engaged to a man named Thomas. He wasn't wealthy, but I loved him. My parents forbade the marriage. They said people from different worlds shouldn't mix. They said I couldn't trust someone from his background." Her voice cracked. "They made me break it off. They arranged my marriage to Harold instead. Good family, right connections, appropriate match. Caroline gasped. Mom, I never knew. I never told anyone. A tear slid down my weathered cheek. Harold was a good man, and I grew to love him in my way, but I buried what I really felt, and somewhere along the line, I became what my parents made me. I started seeing the world through their prejudiced eyes. I started clutching my purse. The machines beeped steadily as she gathered strength to continue. I had a sister, younger than me, Patricia. Those dusty photos in my bedroom, she fell in love with a man my parents disapproved of, a black man, a teacher. When she wouldn't give him up, they disowned her, cut her off completely. I was too much of a coward to stand up for her. I chose my inheritance over my sister. Oh, Mom, Caroline sobbed. Patricia died 5 years ago. We'd been estranged for 43 years. 43 years. I could have known her, loved her, been her sister. But I let my parents' poison become mine. Mrs. Harrison looked at me with eyes full of anguish. And then you came to work for me. And every time I saw you, I saw my own cowardice, my own failure. So I clutched my purse and told myself I was being careful, being smart, but I was really just being everything I hate about myself. My throat was so tight I could barely breathe. You saved my life today, she continued. After everything I've done to demean you, to hurt you, to make you feel small, you saved me. You got down on that floor and you fought for someone who never fought for you. And when I opened my eyes and saw your face, I saw what grace really looks like, what humanity really looks like. Mrs. Harrison, Eleanor, she interrupted. Please, my name is Eleanor. I nodded, unable to speak through my tears. I can't undo 3 years of cruelty, she said. I can't bring back my sister or apologize to her. I can't fix what my parents broke in me. But I can tell you the truth. You are not what I treated you as. You are extraordinary. You are dignified and kind and everything I should have been. And I am so deeply, profoundly sorry. The words I'd waited 3 years to hear were finally spoken, but they didn't taste like victory. They tasted like sadness, like waste, like all the time we'd lost to fear and prejudice. I forgive you, I heard myself say, and I meant it. Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved to be free of the bitterness. I forgive you, Eleanor. She squeezed my hand, and we both cried. 2 women from different worlds, finally seeing each other clearly. Caroline hugged us both, and for a moment, in that hospital room filled with the smell of antiseptic and the sound of machines keeping Eleanor alive, something beautiful happened. Something broke open and healed at the same time. Your daughter, Jasmine. Caroline told me about her program, the fees you're struggling with. You don't have to. I want to. It would be an honor. Let me do this one thing right. She managed a weak smile. Consider it back payment for saving my life, and for saving my soul. That night, as I drove home in the darkness, I thought about how close we'd both come to losing everything. Eleanor almost lost her life. I almost lost my faith in humanity. We'd both been trapped by circumstances, hers by inherited prejudice, mine by inherited poverty. But somehow, impossibly, we'd found a way to break free. Sometimes redemption comes in whispers. Sometimes it comes in hospital rooms. Sometimes it comes in the moment when someone finally sees you, really sees you, and says the 3 words you never thought you'd hear. I was wrong. 6 months have passed since that Tuesday morning when everything changed. Eleanor recovered slowly but steadily. The heart attack had been severe, but she was a fighter, something I hadn't known about her before. During her recovery, I visited her 3 times a week, not as her housekeeper, but as her friend. We'd sit in her sunroom drinking tea, talking about everything and nothing. She asked about my life, really asked, and actually listened to the answers. The purse never moved again, not once. She did something else, too, something I never expected. Eleanor organized a community meeting at the Willow Creek Country Club, a place I'd never been allowed to enter before. She stood in front of 200 of her wealthy neighbors and told them everything about her prejudice, her sister, her shame, and how a woman she'd treated with suspicion saved her life. I clutched my purse because I was afraid, she told them, her voice unwavering. But I wasn't afraid of Keisha Williams. I was afraid of my own inadequacy. I was afraid that if I saw her as fully human, I'd have to confront my own failures as one. Some people were moved, others were uncomfortable, a few walked out. But Eleanor didn't care. She'd found her voice, and she was using it. Jasmine flourished in her STEM program, thriving in ways that made my heart overflow. Eleanor attended Jasmine's first presentation at the university, sitting in the front row, clapping louder than anyone. Afterward, she hugged my daughter and told her, "Your mother is the bravest person I know. Make her proud." Jasmine whispered to me later, "She's not what I expected, Mom." She's not what anyone expected, including herself. Caroline and I became close friends. She apologized constantly for not intervening sooner, but I reminded her that we can only change what we know to change. Now she volunteers at community centers, using her privilege to open doors for people who've been shut out. Eleanor did more than just fund Jasmine's education. She established a scholarship program for children of domestic workers, full tuition, books, everything. She named it the Patricia Fund, after her sister. It was her way of honoring what she'd lost and helping others not lose the same. Last week, Eleanor asked me to come by the house. When I arrived, she handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a check and a letter. The check made my breath catch. The letter made me cry. It read, "Keisha, you saved my life twice. Once on my study floor and once in that hospital room when you chose to forgive me. This is not charity. This is 3 years of back pay for the emotional labor I never should have asked you to endure. Use it for Jasmine's future, for your own dreams, or for whatever brings you peace. You've earned every penny and so much more. With love and eternal gratitude, Eleanor." We hugged for a long time in that foyer where she'd once clutched her purse away from me. Today, Eleanor and I have tea every Thursday. Sometimes we talk about heavy things: prejudice, redemption, the weight of inherited hate. Sometimes we just laugh about silly things, like her new obsession with reality TV, or my terrible attempts at gardening. She's not perfect. Old habits sometimes surface, old phrases slip out. But she catches herself now, apologizes, learns. That's all any of us can do. Recognize our mistakes and choose to be better. My name is Keisha Williams. For 3 years, I was invisible. Then I became the woman who saved a life. But more than that, I became the woman who proved that grace is stronger than bitterness, that forgiveness can transform both the forgiven and the forgiver. Eleanor Harrison clutched her purse every time I walked by. Then she saved my life, and she whispered 3 words that changed everything. I was wrong. Sometimes those are the most powerful words in the world. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If this touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me what forgiveness means to you, or share a time when someone surprised you by changing. Your stories matter just as much as mine. Let's keep this conversation going because every time we choose compassion over judgment, we change the world a little bit. See you in the next video. And remember, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Choose kindness. Always.